Hello and welcome to a video on skills and using them to enhance gameplay. I'm Pandan and today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, skills in Fire Emblem GBA. So for those of you who are not aware, the hackrom community has its own, I say hackrom, the ROM hacking community has their own skill system that's custom built to allow for Tellius or Fates or Awakening style, some even hero style skills, and it's a way to allow for greater customization. And so in this video I do want to tackle skills. It's a topic that I've been avoiding because I have pretty strong opinions on it, but I felt compelled to put this together to lay out my thoughts and also help you, ROMhack creator, determine how should I think about skills in my ROMhack if I even want to use them at all. So let's talk a little bit more here. Our learning objectives. At the end of this video, you'll be able to articulate the benefits of using skills in your hackrom. I don't know why I wrote this as hackrom. It's super funny. I have a good time. So the benefits, right? Like, why would I need skills? What's good about them? You know, the pros. You know, there's pros of using skills. There's also some cons, which we'll cover. You'll be able to compare skills and attempt to balance them. I think a big thing when talking about skills is that it's one term it's a broad umbrella. So let's talk about the different types of skills and what you should be considering when balancing them and comparing what might make a more balanced skill, quote unquote. And then lastly, adding skills to your hackrom without breaking the game. I think one of the most common complaints that I see when I'm browsing on threads on Fire Emblem Universe or just seeing hacks being played is that the skill system appears to be very haphazard and adds a high degree of randomness and unexpected difficulty to the project, and that's no good. And skills, when they're used well, can really enhance an experience and make it better than without having the skills. But I think there's a lot of situations as well on the flip side where skills detract from the experience and they actually make gameplay worse. So let's talk about how we can use skills tastefully, like salting a dish or adding just enough heat. So let's keep moving then. So what are skills? Let's just level set here. Got the homeboy Stefan with his liquid leggings. Skills. The Fire Emblem Wiki describes skills as special abilities which grant additional abilities to individual units which subvert the normal flow of gameplay. Pretty much what that means is that each unit will normally have their own set of abilities. So like Stefan, a sword master, he can use swords. Like, that's his thing. He's a foot unit. He has these advantages in this terrain. These are the weapons he uses. These are his base stats, etc. Skills add an extra layer of complexity. And second to my point being, they allow for additional unit customization. So adding skills, they're not necessarily tied to the specific class, but they're tied to the unit. So you could have two Myrmidons that have different personal skills to differentiate them. And so a lot of people are drawn to skills because they allow for this additional unit customization, and they can also be used to enable new strategies and map gimmicks, especially with stuff like movement skills. And we talk about other skills that enable a different style of play or ways that you can go about making things happen. Like you can use in like the Fates games using Despoil to get money and using that as like your primary economic vehicle. Like that's a neat little gimmick that you can work with. Lunge is a skill that like you can design maps around, assuming the enemies will use it and like bamboozle you that way. Like there's certain things that you can do with skills that weren't traditionally possible before them. So skills do come in a couple different shades. And I do want to talk specifically today about the Fire Emblem 8 skill system, which is what most ROM hackers are using today. And I do want to just share a little bit more about it and draw attention to it. And this is an FE8 hack that enables custom-made skills built by the ROM hack community. Circles Everywhere was one of the key architects in this, and there's a number of other people: Tequila, Crazy Colors, Smee, I know Pikmin1211 has contributed as well. A lot of individual contributors to the skill system. And it includes many modularized features for customization. And so the skill system, you know, I'm not a ROMhack historian. Someone's going to need to fact check me on this. But the skill system was made, and because of how much, you know, rejiggering on the back end the skill system does, there's a lot of additional quality of life that gets included with the core skill system hack, like the ability to show like display movement range for bosses if they don't actually move. Other quality of life has been added over time so that when you're making a ROM hack, you just need to install the skill system or use the skill system in your build file, and it'll automatically come with a lot of these other quality of life improvements. So it's pretty all-encompassing and a pretty common, you know, first thing that you will add or adjust in your hack, and it allows for just a lot of additional customization and modularization. And to get back to history, it was popularized in Void's Blitzar Adventure back in, I want to say this was 2017 when Voids came out, and that was really like just super impressive at the time. The hack was built in a week by a number of members of the community, and it's completely open source, so it became a source of reference for anyone looking to work with the skill system as well as just the new build file method. And now the skill system is everywhere, and since then FE Builder Creator 7743 has been maintaining a custom build of the skill system so that FE Builder users can easily implement it into their hack ROMs. And you can kind of see here what the skills look like. So in Voids, you see there's like a slight adjustment to the MSS or the stat screen, and you can see that there are these skills here that are now visible that aren't in vanilla GBA. It's really cool. It's really powerful. It can do a lot of cool stuff, and so it's no wonder why it's so popular. But with great power comes great responsibility, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm not going to talk about skill systems in other games because for the context and for the core audience of this video, it doesn't matter. I don't care about Fates or Awakening or Teleus right now, or even Thracia or Yugdraw. Like, I don't care about their skill systems. We're talking about this custom-built skill system for Fire Emblem 8 GBA ROM hacking. So categorizing skills. Skills are broad, and we have to think about skills in a number of different ways because, you know, some people will say like, well, that's not really a skill. And it's like, okay, well, when we're talking about skills, how should we think about them? And I was breaking this down to myself before, and I came up with these 4 categories. The first being movement. Movement skills are any skill that triggers some type of movement outside of your normal base movement. So like foot units can move 5 spaces, flyers can move 7 spaces, you know, flyers don't get terrain bonus penalties, whatever. All that kind of stuff. Movement skills add some additional funk to it, like common ones being shove from Teleus, where you can just push the unit 1 extra space. Reposition and pivot and swap are also popular from Heroes, and some other things you can also do now in GBA. Pullback was, I think, introduced in 3 Houses. So these are all these types of like, you the player actively are using this additional tool in your toolkit to move yourself or another unit additional spaces as your primary action on your turn. So movement skills don't impact combat, they do impact your ability to move the map, which thus impacts the flow of the game, but by and large, not a combat-oriented skill. Usually pretty low risk. Enemies can have them on them, but they can't actually use them. ROM hackers have not fixed, I don't want to say fixed, but reconfigured AI to be able to use skills in the way you, as the player, can. Second, skills are passive. And these are skills that don't require any sort of activation. They just happen depending on certain situations. So a good example of a passive skill would be like Strong Riposte, where the player or the unit is getting +3 attack on enemy phase. So anytime you're getting attacked in enemy phase, there's a logic check that says, are you being attacked in enemy phase? Yes. Add +3 damage to your normal damage. Other passive skills like Fiery Blood. Have you taken damage? If yes, then you deal an extra 4 damage. Whatever. spur speed. If you're adjacent to this unit, gain +3 speed. Like, it's conditions that need to be met for skills to then be present. And passive skills are usually easier to plan around and usually not as busted because they require some type of like movement or spatial setup. They either occur in a specific situation that you can plan for, which is important. And so I think passive skills encompass most of the skills that you'll see, and ultimately they boil down to situations where numbers change. If you're in X situation, then Y will occur, to boil it down. And these happen, outside of you like pressing a button for a command. Third are proc skills, and these are skills that activate on a percentage chance when attacking or defending. So a vanilla example would be Great Shield for generals, where there's a percentage chance that nothing will happen to them. Other popular proc skills are things like Aether from the Tellius games, or Luna or Soul, where there's like some percentage chance based on a certain statistic where you will get an additional outcome. A lot of the times proc skills are like glorified crits because they all do so much damage, and generally the enemy balances is such that if you proc any one of those skills, it's going to kill the enemy. So they're mostly just like fancier crits, but they can be annoying and unreliable, but they can also be a lot of fun. And I think I saw S. say this in a chat the other day, but like they're really satisfying when you get one, and I can understand like the fun of that. And I know like playing Tellius, you're fighting the Black Knight, it's really fun to like proc Aether against him, so I get it. And then lastly, we have combat arts. Combat arts have come about more recently. I know Shadows of Valentia had them, in Three Houses they're very prevalent, and these are, some might call them command skills, and these are like a proc, but you choose when to use them. In Three Houses, it's at like the expense of certain weapon durability. In Shadows of Valentia, I think it's based on like specific items, and like you might take like penalties or lose HP for them, whatever. And so these are basically saying like, press this button and you can, make your sword have a Zambato effect, and it'll use like 5 more uses than normal for your iron sword, and it adds like extra hit and crit or whatever. It's just a command to like basically make you expend weapon uses at the behest of some additional bonus. And so the Japanese FE8 Skill System that was built independently of the one for the US ROMs has some combat art capabilities. I think they're perfectly possible currently, but it's worth calling these out. And even like any sort of active skill that requires a command that isn't movement, I would consider like a combat art, like Makaya's sacrifice skill. That's a combat art. You're actively choosing when to use and implement this unique skill that she has. Things like Reinforce that Tanith has is kind of like a combat art in that sense, like a summon, you could argue, is a combat art if we're going to get really technical. So these are the 4 general buckets I think about skills in, and I'm going to be using this language throughout the video so that now we've level set, you should have a better understanding as I go through these other things. So when should I use skills? So there's a couple different scenarios where you might want to consider implementing skills. One is to balance classes, and so I know that like people will like to attach skills to a particular class to help give them a more unique identity or help differentiate them from other classes. Like I think sometimes people will see like you have a fighter and a brigand, and it's like, okay, they're both like chunky axe dudes traditionally. How can I use a skill to differentiate them even further? And so it becomes this like weighing game of like, what skills do I give each of these classes? And skills can be pretty good at doing that, and it can be a good way to give an edge in areas where they might not normally get. I'll talk a little bit more about like my personal opinions on this, but it's something to consider, right? Like, do I want to add skills at the class level so that they can be balanced slightly differently or have a unique flair? Like traditionally you might say, mounts are so dominant, maybe if I give infantry units these extra combat skills, it'll help their overall viability. And that could be true. Also, skills are good for differentiating player units of the same class. So like here we have Kaze and Saizo. They're both ninjas in Fates, and Kaze has a skill that like gives Miracle when he's paired up, and Saizo has a skill that does like extra damage to him and other people around him after he does an attack. So very different use cases and different niches that these both fill, and it can be a way to differentiate these units even further beyond stat spread, growths, join time, etc. So it can be another way to help further customize, as we alluded to earlier. And lastly, I find skills, you can also use them for creating additional challenge for boss units and even things like map gimmicks. So like adding a boss that has Nihil that cancels other skills, or a boss that has Nullify so you can't just like attack it with an Armor Slayer and one round it. So it's a good check for things like that to help prevent boss cheese. If you do it well, it could also make certain boss fights more distinct and memorable if they have a particular skill that encourages the player to approach the fight a different way. I think Faith and Blood, for example, is quite interesting in its second map, where it has a boss that has Armored Blow, and that basically means like you can't enemy phase this guy reasonably. You have to attack him on player phase in order to defeat him. And so like stuff like that can be interesting if done well. These are not all the scenarios where you should use skills, but just some things to consider that came to my mind. So what are some things to avoid with skills? So this is going to be the meaty section. Like, skills are great, and I know for myself, when I was first starting Vision Quest over 2 years ago, I was super stoked that we even had the skill system, that we can work with it. There was all this stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm going to add all these custom skills, and everything's going to be super unique, it's going to be amazing and dope. And what I learned is that it isn't really like that, and that skills need to be treated, you know, like seasoning. You don't want to over-season your game, because then it's just going to be too much. You just need a pinch of salt. You don't need to pour the whole jar, right? So like, keep these things in mind. And the thing that I think is most important to avoid is the cognitive load on the player. A lot of skills, and I think the biggest category of skills that are commonly used are the passive skills. They give different bonuses in different situations, depending on terrain, units that are in place, whatever. A lot of the time, these types of skills, all they're doing is just creating extra math for the player to have to account for. So like in a difficult game, where I have to see how much damage my unit's going to take before I'm in range, I'm checking already the unit's attack, I'm checking their hit rates, I'm checking their weapon, I'm mathing out how much damage they do to me, and that's pretty basic and simple. You know, to see like, is this a safe move? Can my unit handle engaging with this enemy in combat? Skills then add an additional layer of math. Okay, so if he moves this many spaces and lands on like a forest, then I actually can't kill him because he has natural cover and he gets extra defense. Or he has duelist blow and my hit rates are going to be lower on enemy phase than I thought. And so it's this additional math and additional consideration. And once that starts to be on every enemy, it can really compound. And that kind of goes to my next point, where it makes generic enemies annoying, and you want to avoid doing that. I think some hackers will go so far as to like not give any class skills, or at least not tie them to any generics, so that they don't have, you know, an entire map of focus mages that can crit you when they don't expect it. So it's something to consider, right? You want to avoid making generic enemies annoying or too difficult to deal with, because of the skills that you assign to those classes. So there are workarounds you can consider, like at what level do the classes get skills. You might be able to make different copies of the class so that for enemies that have no skill attached. There's ways you can work around this, but again, you want to avoid making generic enemies annoying because you've tied too many skills or powerful skills at the class level. I generally would recommend that if you're going to do something that is more powerful or something that has bigger gameplay or centralizing implications, like you just leave it at the unit level and tie it to a specific unit that should have it versus putting it at their class. Skills can also make the game a little too swingy or unbalanced, and this is especially true if you stick with the defaults, which we'll talk more about on the following slide. But the FE8 GBA skill system, currently at least, when you download it and implement it, it's using the same numbers from Fates. And the numbers in Fates are not the same as the numbers in GBA. Like +6 in GBA is a lot more than +6 in Fates, for example. Just the numbers are different, right? Like if I put Leonardo from FE10 into FE7, he would kill it because his base stats are dope. They're not great for his game, but they're good in GBA. Same thing with Fates, right? Like a unit in Fates is going to have better bases. The numbers are going to be bigger. There's the skills being where they're at are balanced for that game, arguably. The same numbers being input into GBA without consideration for them, it's going to be a problem. And so sometimes skills can make the game really swingy or unbalanced. I think breaker skills at their defaults of like plus or minus 50 are like this. The +6 damage for some of these like stance skills and blow skills can really like just be so centralizing and become just flat out annoying. So something to keep in mind there. You want to avoid making the skill, you want to avoid skill emblem, right? Where like the game is just dominated by like who has what skills and just like, do I have to consider them? And then lastly, using skills in place of existing systems. So there are some skills that like just add stuff that could really just be done at the unit level, right? Like I think a classic example is like the awakening skill, like +2 skill for archers. And it's like, well, couldn't you just give that archer an additional 2 points of skill instead of making a separate little like modular icon for it? Yes. And you as a hackrom creator should do this. And so if there's going to be situations like Fortress Defense where like you get +3 defense and -5 attack, it's like, why not just adjust their bases then? With Blossom, it doubles growth rates. Like, why not just give them higher growth rates then? Like, why are we doing this extra song and dance? Unless, of course, you're using like a manual system and you're adding them to a unit afterwards and like you're giving that choice to the player, that's fine. But like if a unit comes with Blossom, why just not just give them extra growths, right? Just something to consider. You don't necessarily need to use skills in place. If you can use an existing system, you should use the existing system. If you can customize the unit further by adjusting their bases or their growths or whatever, or like class data to accommodate a skill you want to apply, you should probably just do that instead of adding additional layers of complexity with a skill. That's a personal opinion. But these are some key things I think you just want to be avoidant of, and a lot of it comes back to that first point. Cognitive load. Don't make the player think too much, or else it's going to be really hard to make the game fun to play. So what are some of my recommendations? So I'm going to get on my soapbox here and talk about what I would do. Now, I do want to caveat and say that, like, to you listening to this video, if you are thinking about how to balance the skill system, one, don't take everything I say at face value, and don't do everything I say to the T. Because I have my own biases as a player and a designer, and I recognize that what I like in Fire Emblem might not be what you like in Fire Emblem, and it might be different than what you want. My recommendations are coming from a place of, I like Fire Emblem that is fair but challenging, that leans a little bit more towards the simple and traditional side of things, and is generally player phase oriented and easy to calculate. Those are the kinds of things that I really like, and when I think of using the skill system, I'm thinking of using them in that context. And I can say from my experience with Vision Quest, I used to have 2 class skills, one that they already started with and one at level 15, kind of similar to like the 3DS model. And I ended up scrapping one of the skills from each of the class and just making it 1 class skill at level 15 and then 1 personal skill plus Shove or Canto. So a total of 3 skills per unit, all of which were passive. I removed procs. It was just movement, passive, etc. So there's different ways you can balance it. I think generally you want a more muted system. You don't want to go with just like anything, unless you're the experienced one is like, I want something super zany and weird, and it's like, sure, then like you're probably not getting much out of my videos, then just like be you, dude. But if you are trying to make a project that is a little bit more serious, like I described, or are interested in just creating like a balanced experience around your concept, consider these things. But don't take everything I say to a T, because I am a biased curmudgeon, and you shouldn't listen to me. First is change the defaults. For the love of God, please change the defaults. The skill system defaults are meant to be changed. You shouldn't take them at face value as balanced. The people who made the skill system will tell you this, that it's not balanced. I don't know why the defaults are as they are today. They're easy enough to change, but for you, the new ROM hacker on the scene, don't just go with what the base system gives you. It's terribly unbalanced, and you should use the opportunity to customize to fit your own system. Take inspiration, for sure, but don't do it exactly as it is. It's really like meant to be demo-y and show what the skill system can do. It's not necessarily balanced for gameplay. So please, whatever you do, change the defaults, pare it down, swap out the skills, do something. If I see another hack that just uses default skill system, I will roll my eyes once more. And it's usually like one of the first things you want to make sure you're doing in a hack that has the skill system is that you're customizing how the skill system is meant to interact with your hack. And changing the defaults is that first step. So please, I know I said don't listen to me, but if you're going to listen to me on anything, it's this. Thank you. Second, keep the cognitive load low. Make it so that skills matter just enough that I need to think about them, but not think about them too much. I know I've gotten a lot of feedback that people ignore skills in Vision Quest, and that's fine. And that kind of tells me I didn't really need it. And I probably could have done even less than what I did. But I'm okay with it because it gives some of the units different niches, and they're very minor, but they can be fun. And that, I think, is a good balance to strike. You don't want to necessarily have to make the player calculate all of this additional situational damage, and like, especially with things that are like in Heroes, where the maps are smaller, you know, it's a little bit more run and gun, it's much more matchup oriented. You know, the games are generally faster than a full Fire Emblem map. Like, you can afford maybe to have like a skill with like all these different requirements. In GBA with like 30 enemies on the map, you don't need that. Keep the cognitive load low. Make it simple for the player to understand how they can take advantage of a skill and then what they need to do to avoid an enemy who may have something. Similarly, avoid RNG-based skills on enemies. Kind of goes back to the cognitive load thing, but it also just adds an extra degree of randomness. We don't need enemies running around with the ability to proc either, because it's just going to be an extra calculation. It's a deceptive crit. Alright, like you wouldn't put crit on every single enemy on the map. You shouldn't give them a proc skill that effectively functions like that, unless you're just trying to make like a trolley sort of haha project. So something to keep in mind. Avoid RNG-based skills. And then, lastly, if you're so technically inclined, create your own skills, dude. That's the move. Like, create your own skills to suit your needs. Staff of Ages does this. Last Heavenly Throne is doing this. JP Hack does this. I know Fallen Flame does this. And that's great. The skill system is meant to be modular, and it comes with a lot of great skills that are free to use and edit. But you gotta be able to create your own to suit your own needs. You gotta do it for you, man. And you can do this to inject additional personality into your skills that fit certain unit dynamics or whatever. You can make things that are a little bit more subdued or tied to a situation that's relevant. But the skill system is meant to be built upon. It is a system, not just like a product you use out of the box. It's enabling you as a creator to get creative and use the system to implement your own additional calculations and logic checks to then create more additional customization and personalization for your units and ultimately your game. So keep that in mind as well. Like, if it doesn't exist, like, try to make it if you're so inclined to. I think that can be a good way to ensure that things are more balanced. Similarly, you can also just change the values of other skills, like I alluded to, like with the breaker skills being plus or minus 50 in the default. If you like breaker skills, sure, like they can be fun. but maybe you want to lower those values a bit. You can do that. You can customize it. I know Legends of Avenir does this. This is what I did as well. I nerfed the values for Vision Quest across the board to make them a little bit more in line with the GBA numbers, to make it feel a little bit more balanced and not nearly as swingy, where, you know, one proc of a skill and I'm dead, or like I attack on player phase and I'm doing twice as much damage as I'm doing an enemy phase. Like, that's a little too much. Keep it within reason. So those are just some things to keep in mind as far as the skill system goes. And again, ultimately it comes down to, what are the goals of your project? What are you trying to achieve? And so I hope these things are helpful. And that's it, guys. That's all I have to say on skills. I personally think skills, if thought through carefully, can really enhance an experience and make it really fun. I think oftentimes skills can be added without much care, and it just makes the game more cumbersome and distracting. For myself and my own learnings, I'm pretty satisfied with what I did for Vision Quest, which was the one personal, the one movement, Canto or Shove, and then the one class skill. I've been experimenting a bit with other combinations, see if it's fun. Like Capture is a skill we didn't even touch on in this video. You have to balance your entire game needs to be balanced around Capture, right? I've been experimenting with just like using Capture, Shove, and Canto Plus and Steel Plus. No additional combat skills, but other things to make the game different and change the experience of your ROMhack. And that's the power that the skill system offers. And I really want to thank the Fire Emblem Universe community for building and maintaining this. Circles Everywhere did a great job. There's a lot of other contributors who are constantly updating it with new skills and fixes. And a big thank you to 7743 for implementing an FE builder to thus enable so many ROM hackers who otherwise wouldn't be able to use it because they're scared of build files like me. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and just do what you gotta do, man. I hope this is helpful. Change your defaults. Thanks again.